Hi students, in this class we will be taking on the last fat soluble vitamin, that is vitamin K. We already took on vitamin A in two classes, then vitamin D and then vitamin E, and now we come to vitamin K. We are going ahead as per competency 6.5, alright, which says describe the biochemical role of vitamins in the body and explain the manifestations of their deficiency. Now, I'd like to tell you one funny thing. Depending on what time you are watching this, it's actually a pre-recorded class. Alright, it may seem like a live premiere, and I am recording this class on 20th of May 2020. So if you see any funny noise, rustling and sound of rain, it's nothing but fun. Okay, I didn't close the window deliberately because I am just loving it. But in any time, if you see me blown away, please know that I am dead and mere jane ke baad awaaz uthana, right? So, vitamin K. Vitamin K, the structure of vitamin K, you don't need to know the structure. You need to know what are the three types of vitamin K. I mean, what are their scientific name. Like vitamin A was retinoic acid, etc. Vitamin D was cholecalciferol, calcitriol. Vitamin E was alpha, beta, gamma, delta, tocopherol. Vitamin K, like that, is quinone. So phylloquinone, menaquinone and menadione. Alright. When you become an intern and you prescribe vitamin K injection, one of these three will be present. Okay. Menadione is the most common one. Now, you don't need to remember, but just for the concept, this is the overall structure. This is a quinone ring, double keto group along with benzene. Okay. Now, this basic skeleton is same for all, only this R group varies. How this varies? If this R is a 20 carbon chain, it's vitamin K1 or phylloquinone. If it's 30, it's vitamin K2 or menaquinone. Or if simply an H group, a hydrogen atom, it is menadione. So, menadione is the simplest form of vitamin K. We will straight away go into the absorption and storage. Mind it, vitamin K, in vitamin K there is much less to read compared to the other fat soluble vitamins, so this class will be much shorter than you expect. So, vitamin K, as you know, it's a fat soluble vitamin, so you will use your previous concepts and it will go along with other fat soluble vitamins, that is, it is absorbed via the chylomicrons. Along with chylomicrons and bile salt are required for normal absorption, because bile salt helps in emulsification of fat. The moment fats are emulsified into small micelles and chylomicrons, similarly with like vitamin A, D and E, vitamin K will also be absorbed. But regarding the source of vitamin K, you need to know that there are sources of vitamin K, that is green leafy vegetables, but intestinal bacteria, okay, the flora that is present in our gut, they can also synthesize vitamin K. Therefore, vitamin K deficiency seldom occurs, okay, unless the intestinal bacteria is killed and all, which is not normal. So, vitamin K is actually derived from the intestinal bacterial synthesis. And like all fat soluble vitamins, it is stored in the liver, okay, and it is transported in plasma along with beta lipoprotein. What are beta lipoproteins? Beta means B. So, those lipoproteins that contain ApoB fraction like B48, B100, so chylomicron, HDL, LDL, VLDL, alright. Remember, HDL is not a beta lipoprotein, right? HDL lipoprotein are ApoC2 and ApoE, that you already know from your lipoprotein classes. So, most important, what's the biochemical role of vitamin K, right? Next, we come to the biochemical role of vitamin K. So, right away you need to know vitamin K is necessary for coagulation. It means it is a procoagulant vitamin. So, it will prevent hemorrhage, it will prevent bleeding. So normally blood is in a fluid state. If any cut occurs, it will spill out. So vitamin K is required to prevent that. So it will act as a coagulant. How it acts as a coagulant? It helps in activation of clotting factors, few clotting factors. If you attended my 1 carbon metabolism class, I told you there that there is a type of carboxylation which is biotin dependent carboxylation. Normally all types of carboxylase enzymes are biotin dependent, but there is an exception. Those are gamma carboxylation of clotting factors which are dependent on vitamin K. So this is what's going on here. And what are the factors that are dependent? What are the clotting factors? The clotting factors are 2, 7, 9 and 10. These are synthesized in the liver. So factor 2, that is prothrombin, factor 7, that is serum prothrombin conversion accelerator, SPCA, or it was previously known as proconvertin, and factor 9, that is Christmas factor, and factor 10 Stewart power factor. So these are the factors that are helped by vitamin K to get activated. So all these factors are synthesized in liver as inactive zymogens. Alright, they are inactive to start with. However, after being synthesized, the proteins undergo post-translational modification. You know, translation is RNA to protein. So you will read in the molecular biology classes that after a protein is formed, they undergo some modification in order to get their full functional state. So that is known as post-translational, after translation modification, and one of them is these gamma carboxylation of glutamic acid residues of the clotting factors. So vitamin K helps in that reaction. Now you need to know that these are all binding site for calcium ion. From your coagulation cascade, you know, all over there calcium ion is forming a complex, right? So calcium ion binds to all of them, and this reaction actually requires gamma carboxyglutamic acid synthesis, requires vitamin K as a cofactor. So thus vitamin K helps in activation of the clotting factors 2, 7, 9, 10. How they are activated? As post-translational modification. What happens? Gamma carboxyglutamic acid residues get carboxylated. Okay, the glutamic acid residues get carboxylated in order to form gamma carboxyglutamic acid, and that reaction requires vitamin K as a cofactor. So mind it, one example of biotin independent carboxylation is this. So examiner might ask you, okay, give one example of biotin dependent carboxylation. Then all the carboxylation enzymes that you know, acetyl CoA carboxylase, propionyl CoA carboxylase, and all the other enzymes of lipid metabolism, fats bio de novo synthesis of fatty acid, etc., will come into play. So remember, biochemical role of vitamin K is this: vitamin K dependent carboxylase, that is biotin independent. Normally carboxylases are biotin dependent. You don't need to remember the structure, but remember glutamic acid residues of protein chain are carboxylated. Okay, so gamma carboxyglutamate in protein, GCG, and vitamin K acts as a cofactor in this reaction. So it is a vitamin K dependent carboxylation. A CO2 group, a COO group will get imparted, okay, over here, see. And as I told you, calcium ion binds to these sites for further activation of the clotting factors. Remember, if this reaction does not happen, calcium ions cannot bind and the coagulation cascade will fail. It means bleeding will continue. Bleeding, the coagulation cascade is triggered once there is a cut or any injury, right? So that will be dangerous. Now this question, vitamin K cycle, is very important. This came multiple times as a short note, or it may be a part of a long question as well. So if like vitamin A, Wald's visual cycle is very important. In vitamin K, two things you need to know. Number one is the general, it helps in gamma carboxylation of clotting factor, and the must know area is this vitamin K cycle, very important. Now what happens? Vitamin K cycle is nothing but, again I am telling you, don't need to know the structures, okay, just know the names. If you want to score exceptionally well, if you want to be the topper, if you want to score highest, by any means, please remember the structure. I and all the other examiners will be most happy to see your answer script if you have got these organic structures, okay. But do not stress yourself, because you have to remember so much more from anatomy and physiology and biochemistry before on the day of exam. So this vitamin K cycle is nothing but cyclic reaction or interchanging reaction between the oxidized form of vitamin K, the reduced form of vitamin K, and the epoxide form of vitamin K. Okay, ignore this dicumarol. Okay, ignore this structure for the time being. So just see what is happening. We are interchanging. This is a cyclic, one unidirectional reaction. Okay, the reactions are not reversible. So what is happening? First, there is oxidized form of vitamin K, that is the quinone form. Okay, it gets reduced by the enzyme vitamin K reductase. Okay, the quinone becomes hydroquinone. It's nothing but the keto groups are converted to OH groups. Okay, reduction, simply aldehyde or keto group, they on reduction they produce alcohol. The same thing is happening over here on both sides. It takes place with the help of a reductase enzyme, and the reducing equivalent uses NADPH. Remember, you don't need to remember the structures, okay. Remember that you don't need to remember the structures, but you need to remember the reaction. So oxidized vitamin K is converted to reduced vitamin K with the help of reductase enzyme. The reducing equivalent is NADPH. Okay, very important, and it is converted to NADP plus. In the next reaction, this reduced vitamin K is now the active form. This reaction, this form is actually catalyzing the gamma carboxylation. That is, who is gamma carboxylated? The clotting factors. The glutamic acid in the clotting factors are getting converted to gamma carboxyglutamate, and it is catalyzed by the reduced form. The reduced form acts as a cofactor. You already saw in the previous slide, this is the carboxylase dependent enzyme or vitamin K dependent carboxylase reaction. This is the reaction actually, okay, carboxylase reaction, where an oxygen and carbon dioxide is getting incorporated, just like here. So remember, you while drawing vitamin K cycle, these things should be there. This whole aromatic structure is not important, but by the help of a carboxylase enzyme, the reduced vitamin K is converted to an epoxide form, and during that it is catalyzing conversion of a glutamic acid to gamma carboxyglutamate. Basically, the carboxylase CO2 and O2 is incorporated. Okay, the cofactor itself gets converted to an epoxide form, and in order to complete the cycle, we again need to convert the epoxide form into the quinone form. How it happens? It is formed with the help of a epoxide reductase. Okay, you see, very easy, epoxide reductase. This epoxide reductase enzyme actually converts epoxide form of vitamin K to the oxidized form of vitamin K. So now we are back to the quinone form, and thus the whole cycle is complete. So I am again recapping for you. The oxidized form, that is the quinone form, undergoes reduction with the help of vitamin K reductase. It requires NADPH as a cofactor, and it gets converted to NADP plus. Okay, this NADP plus will again be converted to NADPH. Examiner might ask you how. There are multiple reactions. One of them is pentose phosphate pathway. Okay, so I am not going into the details of this one. Pentose phosphate pathway, Malic enzyme, there are multiple pathways how NADP plus can be converted back to NADPH. Forget that. So once the quinone form is converted to hydroquinone form, it undergoes conversion to epoxide form. How? with the help of a carboxylase enzyme. The carboxylase enzyme actually carboxylates glutamic acid to gamma carboxyglutamate of the clotting factors, and in the meantime, during that, the reduced form is converted to epoxide form. Now, how we will complete the cycle? The epoxide form is acted upon by epoxide reductase and it is again converted to the oxidized form. Okay, remember, you can consider epoxide, the name, you see, it is a parody. Okay, if you look into the thing from an enzymatic and chemical point of view, alchemy point of view, okay, it is a reductase enzyme which is basically making an oxidized form. How? Make no mistake, we are making an oxidized form from an epoxide, which is a further higher oxidized form. Okay, so from an epoxide form, this one oxygen is getting lost, so it is actually reduction. So therefore, epoxide reductase, and these are also lost. So epoxide reductase actually takes these H2 and this oxygen and leads to, basically makes a water molecule goes out. Okay, and if you check the valency and the electronic conformation, you will see epoxide reductase is doing reduction. Okay, believe me, you don't need to go into all those details, just simply remember epoxide form to oxidized form reductase, oxidized form to reduced form vitamin K reductase, and reduced form to epoxide form carboxylase. Now, one thing over here you need to remember, this reaction, that is epoxide reductase, the cofactor is reduced lipoic acid. Okay, so lipoic acid, you remember lipoic acid you studied in pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. Okay, PDH complex had 3 enzymes and 5 coenzymes, so TPP lipoamide, so lipoic acid you encountered over there. If you are answering very well, examiner will ask you, fine, can you name another reaction where lipoic acid acts as cofactor? Most of the students will start scratching their head, but the exceptionally good student can easily and confidently answer, yes sir, it also acts as a cofactor in vitamin K cycle, and then examiner will take out a garland and put on your head and of course give you an exceptionally good mark. So remember, reduced lipoic acid will be converted to oxidized lipoic acid. In addition, not only the cofactor, you also need to know an inhibitor of this reaction. Okay, so warfarin and dicumarol. Okay, these are the inhibitors. Okay, dicumarol and warfarin, these are anticoagulants, so it will prevent this vitamin K cycle. Vitamin K is a procoagulant. Vitamin K was activating the clotting factors, so if this cycle is stopped, the clotting factors will not be activated and the whole thing will now go in a reverse direction. So in some situation where we do not want clotting, okay, you will read what are those conditions, and in that case these warfarin will act as anticoagulant. Okay, there are multiple scenarios where we do not want clotting, and this in the inset, this is nothing but the structure of dicumarol, not important for you. Okay, now over here let me tell you why even we want anticoagulation. Okay, remember, those who are having prosthetic heart valves, okay, or those who are having an already atherosclerotic phenomenon or high cholesterol, it is these clots, the microclots that get deposited day after day on the nidus or the atherosclerotic plaque, and ultimately they will form a big thrombus and they will lead to catastrophe and disaster, that is heart attack or acute myocardial infarction or stroke. In those cases, and also there is something called deep vein thrombosis. So anything where there is a hypercoagulable state or the coagulation factors are overactive, we need anticoagulant. Similarly, in case of open heart surgery, ignore open heart surgery, there are many situations where we do not want the system to undergo clotting. There we need to administer warfarin well in advance so that the whole system remains fluid and the process of clotting does not take place. Of course, it has got its side effect. The side effects are, as you have guessed, there will be the coagulation system will be totally disrupted. So even if a small minor cut during brushing, bleeding will continue and bleeding will not stop. So it is the risk versus benefit ratio on which the anticoagulant dose are titrated. People can get away with small cuts, but people will die due to excess coagulation and all these phenomena that I told you. Alright. So we move on. Remember vitamin K cycle. So I will erase all these that I have drawn over here. Okay. So if you want, you can take a snapshot, or you can, I hope you have already drawn. Okay. So remember, this is the clean version of vitamin K cycle, and you need to draw this in your exam answer script without the structures. So what are the causes of deficiency of vitamin K? In normal adults, the deficiency seldom occurs because it is produced by the intestinal bacteria and it is sufficient for normal adults. Okay. However, as like vitamin E, who may be deficient? The preterm infants or premature infants, because they absorb vitamin, these fat soluble vitamins from mother, and these absorption occurs in later half of the pregnancy, that is near the term. So if a baby is born preterm or prematurely, then this vitamin K will be grossly deficient, and deficiency of vitamin K will lead to hemorrhage. So it is known as HDN, or hemorrhagic disease of newborn. So remember, there is a malabsorption of first, in case of malabsorption, okay, forget newborn babies. In case of adults, diseases like obstructive jaundice, which reduces bile salts, and same pancreatitis, prove all those diseases that were causing absorption or malabsorption of all the fat soluble vitamins. Vitamin K will also be malabsorbed or not absorbed, leading to vitamin K deficiency. And since it is produced by intestinal bacteria, okay, any treatment that leads to killing of these intestinal bacteria, I told you just 15 minutes back, it is not normal, however it may happen. In prolonged antibiotic therapy for gastrointestinal infection, antibiotics target the pathogens in our gut. So some, suppose Entamoeba histolytica or any Salmonella, Shigella, these bacteria will be studying in microbiology. These are notorious to form diarrhea, to cause diarrhea. So we have antibiotic like metronidazole, Metrogyl, O2, the ofloxacin, ornidazole. These are all capsules or tablets that are often prescribed to us during diarrhea. These kill all the intestinal bacteria. Along with that, the normal flora is also destroyed. So now it can lead to vitamin K deficiency. So remember, in case of prolonged antibiotic therapy, I mean 3 months at stretch, prolonged diarrhea, it will not, deficiency will not happen if you just take 5 tablets to complete a course over 1 week. Okay, so prolonged antibiotic therapy is something, not our regular diarrheal medication. Okay. So in these cases, we also need to supplement probiotics. You will see pre and probiotic sachet, lactobacillus sachets that are available. Those actually reinstate or reform the intestinal flora so that many other functions along with vitamin K synthesis can be resumed in our body. So this is the cause of vitamin K deficiency in adults. So what is the cause of clinical, or what are the clinical manifestation of vitamin K deficiency? As I told you, hemorrhagic disease of newborn is attributed to vitamin K deficiency, because the newborns, that is especially the premature babies, are deficient in vitamin K. They are relatively deficient in vitamin K because, as I told you, they are absorbing vitamin K from their mothers. But if they do not have the chance, if they are delivered before the completion of 40th week, it is always advised, just like vitamin E supplementation, vitamin K prophylaxis is a must in premature babies. Otherwise, they will have a disease known as hemorrhagic disease of newborn, or HDN, where they will have bleeding from umbilical cord stem, they will have bleeding from gums, eyes, and it may lead to death of the baby also. So, we never want that. So, vitamin K supplementation, that is 1 milligram Menadione injection, is always given in an intramuscular fashion to those small newborn babies. And in children and adult, if at all vitamin K deficiency happens, it is manifested as increased bleeding tendency, because vitamin K was acting as cofactor to prevent hemorrhage. It was acting as a coagulant, it was acting as a procoagulant. So, if it is deficient, so those patients will have increased bleeding tendency, increased bruising tendency. What is bruise? Or if you get a blunt trauma, you will see blackening of these areas. So, if you get excessively blunt trauma, what happens? Capillaries are ruptured and blood gets clotted under the skin. So, those are known as bruit or bruises. Normally, if you are hit very hard, okay, then only this can happen. But these patients have got easy bruising tendency. Even if you give a small tap, he or she will develop a big bruise. If that happens spontaneously, they are known as ecchymotic patches. Okay, so ecchymosis is also a cause where there is decreased platelets. So, these are all increased bruising tendency, everything are related to deficiency of vitamin K. Okay, so intravascular bleeding occurs, which ultimately gets clotted due to other factors, but the main problem in them all, bruising tendency or ecchymotic patches or mucous membrane hemorrhage, all these things are related to increased bleeding tendency. So, if vitamin K is deficient, we will have increased bleeding tendency or hemorrhagic condition. Remember, post traumatic bleeding, nasal bleeding and internal bleeding. So, all things related to bleeding. Post traumatic bleeding means, I told you, suppose you develop a minor cut while cutting your nail, or a minor cut develops while shaving, nothing happens. Normally blood trickles out, and then if you apply something, blood will stop, because all of the clotting factors are active. But in case of vitamin K deficiency, the clotting factors will be less active and blood will continue to flow for much longer time. And how will we diagnose them? So, these are all symptoms, these are all complaints that patient will do. So, in our lab or in a clinical scenario, we will see that prolongation of PT and delaying of clotting time are the characteristic of vitamin K deficiency. Remember, during nutrition class, I told you PT was a marker of acute liver failure. In acute liver failure, what happens? These gamma carboxylation of clotting factors occurs in liver, and we need vitamin K. So, even if vitamin K is present, liver failure PT will be high, and even if the liver is okay, if vitamin K is deficient, again this PT will be high. So, either acute liver failure or vitamin K deficiency, the diagnosis or the marker is raised PT or prothrombin time, and clotting time will also be delayed because of all the other clotting factors. You should know the list of clotting factors that participate in bleeding time, clotting time, prothrombin time. Okay, these are catch questions in physiology. So, you need to know that warfarin and dicumarol will competitively inhibit the gamma carboxylation system due to the structural similarity with vitamin K. You saw in the vitamin K cycle that the epoxide reductase enzyme was inhibited by dicumarol. Okay. So, if you think I am going fast, don't worry, we are almost at the end of our class. These are the few applied importance of vitamin K. So, vitamin K inhibitor, that is warfarin and dicumarol, will inhibit the vitamin K cycle, and thus they act as anticoagulant, and they are widely used for therapeutic purposes. So, what therapeutic purpose? I already mentioned you in brief detail. You need to know the conditions where we need blood not to coagulate, we need anticoagulant therapy. And remember, treatment, the warfarin is an absolute contraindication in pregnant women. It is a teratogenic drug. Any drug that harms the fetus is known as teratogenic, TERRATOGNIC. There are many drugs which are strictly banned or strictly contraindicated in pregnant women. So, warfarin is an example of a teratogenic drug. It is highly damaging to the fetus because it leads to fetal bone abnormalities, which is also known as fetal warfarin syndrome. So, we come to the last bits and pieces of vitamin K, which we need to know for all vitamins and which we almost tend to forget. Okay, those are the daily requirement of vitamin K, which is 50 to 100 microgram per day, and that is usually available in a normal diet. What are the sources of vitamin K? If you want to name dietary sources, that are green leafy vegetable, that are good sources, but intestinal bacterial synthesis will meet daily requirements. So, attention, those fully non-veg persons that hate vegetables and those whose parents have to give you gifts in order to feed vegetables to you, you are safe from vitamin K deficiency. And last but not the least, hypervitaminosis K. What if vitamin K is given in excess? Okay, administration of large doses of menadione may result in toxicity because it's a fat soluble vitamin and it will get stored in the fat depots, the adipose tissue. Mainly it happens in children because they are supplemented with vitamin K, menadione, to prevent hemorrhagic disease of newborns, and in them hemolysis, hyperbilirubinemia, kernicterus and brain damage can happen. Okay, the mechanism why hemolysis, how hemolysis happens, why kernicterus happens, those are not important for you to remember. Just know this, it is the hemolysis which leads to release of hemoglobin. These hemoglobin are converted to bilirubin and these bilirubin are ultimately results in CNS deposition and kernicterus. So, hemolysis is the main side effect of hypervitaminosis K. If you are smart enough, you can apply your brain. I won't give you the full answer, but the answer lies in vitamin K cycle because over there NADPH was being used. So, if excess vitamin K is there in system, all of the NADPH is used up and that NADPH will lead to a deficiency of NADPH, and then those free radical pathways etc. will be activated and then that will lead to hemolysis and oxidative stress. It's a long stretch. Okay, you don't need to know the mechanism, just remember hypervitaminosis K, hemolysis, bilirubinemia, kernicterus and brain damage. So, we come to the end of our fat soluble vitamin class. Feel free to get back to me in the comment section with any queries. Remember, vitamin K cycle and the gamma carboxylation of clotting factors are the ones that you need to know from vitamin K. So, I will continue my classes where I will be seeing you with another exciting topic very soon. Till then, bye and take care.